Good evening. We are in Richmond Street, Port of Spain, with Mr. Timothy Gervais. He is a past president of the National Parang Association and the leader of the Gervais Mello strings. Good evening, sir. Tell us a little bit of how long you've been involved in parang music in Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, to be exact, I'm involved in parang for the past 40 years.
And you were always with Gervais Mello strings?
No. There were changes. I started with sponsors. And I remember, I recall some years, 30 years ago, I was with the airline, that's BB. I was with BB. And I also was National, BWIA National, that's a lot of years. But let me say that parang emerged from the rural areas to start off with. And I talk in terms of the 1955 thereabout, going as far as in the 50s.
Okay, you're going into how you actually got started.
Yeah,
very well. Okay.
I must say that I inherited from my parents. My parents, and particularly my father.
And you are originally from which area?
I'm originally from Erie.
Erie. So there was a lot of that happening in Erie at the time?
Yes, a lot of that. And this is because a lot of the people came through from Venezuela. They came through. In those days, used to have battering and what have you. But they came through that avenue from Venezuela. So it used to go and come by boat, of course. Well, we should call it, in those days we call it contraband. Contraband, that means they go and carry. They bring back parrot, they bring back monkey, they bring back macaw, and these things where they kept it. No, when they came here in those early days, most of them went into agriculture. Most of them went into agriculture. And this is why that culture was practiced. They were allowed, because the masters were allowed. After the abolition, well, of course, that is 1838 when they abolished slavery.
So how did parang music evolve out of that?
Well, coming out of that, in the 50s, the early settlers were allowed to carry on with their religion and their cultural background. And therefore, one of the things that they had, there were two basic instruments that was used to do that at the time. The marac, which you see the gentleman have next to me here, that's the marac and a quattro. The rest was singing, vocals, big family. It was something kept with a family, to a family. It was not something that you would go outside. And during that period, there used to be a lot of, as I said again, agriculture. Now, the other language that used to be spoken a lot was a mix-up, was patois. And this was inherited by the earlier settlers, where the French people and ruled this country. And this is why they had a broken language. They were not allowed to think that, and Calypso as well emerged from that era. But I'm going back to parang. And that emerging came from where they used to have cocoa house. And you will see one that is very popular in Lopino. And they used to go up there and mix up and dance the cocoa. So while they use a lavue, so they mix up the Spanish and the French. They mix up the Spanish with. So where you have those cocoa houses like in Lopino, which is still there, and as a mark for perhaps a mark of what I should say, of the cultural background. They used to dance, and they used to dance that cocoa with a lavue. Now you notice that I use the word lavue, and those are French terms.
So there's a
mix up
of both cultures.
With both cultures. And unfortunately for me, you notice my name is Gervais, and that is French. But my mother was Spanish, and she was Figueroa, and sometimes Sanchez. So it's a mixture with the Spanish and the French.
But coming out of, you said in Erie, a lot of what was practiced there is out of Venezuela.
Yeah, so most of the thing came out from Venezuela.
So would parang be a part of that as well?
Yes, parang was the basic thing. Now what used to happen? After the Estes, most of our parents and so on, they used to work on the plantations. And after that, during like the festive season, they were allowed to practice their own culture, and that's to say parang. So some of them, they made their own instrument. One of the things that was very encouraging and creative by these old people, they made their own instrument. Some made it, some came with one, and they took it, and they were very, very creative, and they made their own instrument. And from that, the basic instrument was then quattro. The quattro, as I told you, and the mara. Now, what used to happen around from October to December, it was the big season in the country area. These people will go household, particularly the family. As I told you, they will have 8 in the band. But what they did at that time is to go with what we call house to house parang. Now, when you go there, you have to sing. You may have one quattro, and a marac. And
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that as a child.
But it must be most of the people go around with family, cousins, right? And you'll go to each house and serenade. Now, some of the basic tunes, you must sing a serenade, or you call it in terms now we call that aguinaldo. This is for entering. This is for entering the home. So we go in at John Brown, our cousin, and maybe, of course, maybe in the district. So that is why it was kept in the rural areas. It's lately that you see parang in town. It never used to be all rural. And places like Rancho Quemado, Erin, Lopino, Arima, Talparo, and some of the names, they pick what I'm saying here. Brazil, Rio Claro, and these were the areas that the parang was practiced.
However, they still practice there?
Yeah, today it is still there, but with a lot of modification, a lot of changes.
We're going to come back to the modifications, because that's a key part of the research that we are conducting.
Right.
But now you've been around a very, very long time, and you would have seen a lot of changes occur. Tell me something about the changes that have occurred.
All right. In the early 60s, we had the radio station. The early 60s, we had the radio station, and we had the bands deciding now to do some changes to improve. So in order to do that, we had to go to the radio station. It was 610, carried on a man they called Leo De Leon. He was one, I remember him. And we used to go there and play because we were not privy to the television yet. And because that came a long time after. So we started there. And by going there was a gentleman named Errol Mohammed. And I must say that he was one of the true founders of the parang, and then we formed an association. The association was built around about 8, and we decided to ask the radio station, of course, at that time was 610 radio, to play the type of parang that we are accustomed playing around the Christmas season. I must point out that during the periods we play is basically from October to December, to the end of the year.
And that's what happens.
And part of it is still carried on. And then we have one we use, as I said again, you remember I told you about the culture with the patois culture in Spanish. Yes. We have what they call lewa. Now, in Spanish it's El Tres Reyes. That's the 3 wise kings. That is in English we say the Epiphany, which is the 6th of January. That is where it closes. So we call it lewa. That's a French term. But also, Los Tres Reyes, the 3 wise kings, or the 3 kings, is also the same thing, the 6th of January, a very prominent time when the parang ends.